last week I was thinking about this discussion because I was all excited, and along comes NPR. You know NPR stands for National Professor Radio. So if you want to sound smart, say, on NPR, and your professors will go, oh, that person is, I think they should get an A. But at any rate, I'm listening to NPR, and they bring up this discussion of disability. I'm thinking, oh, this is intriguing. And the person, the author, what do you call a radio journalist? The journalist says, you know, as welfare has gone down, disability has gone up, almost hand in hand, almost the exact same numbers. And so she says, what is this? And she goes to a county in Alabama, Arkansas, one of the A states, not Alaska, and where a quarter of the adult population is on disability. She goes down there and starts talking to them. You know, she thinks she's going to find like welfare scams down here. And she talks to the doctor that's writing all the disability orders. And, you know, he's not a scammer. He's, you know, seems like a decent guy. Actually talks to the people, and they tell stories of, you know, I would go to work and I would cry. It hurt so bad in my back I couldn't even focus on my work. And so then she goes back and talks to the doctor again. And it comes up, and this blew me away. I was like, oh, this is awesome. It comes up that these are people who, part of the disability rule, I guess, is not just, are you disabled, but are you disabled such that you'll have trouble finding gainful employment? Well, in this particular county of Arkansas, are you ready? Are you ready? It wasn't that these people were wheelchair bound and incapable of anything. It was that they were incapable of working for the kind of jobs that actually existed there, because they had not moved to anything like the post-industrial economy that you guys are hoping to enter. So she's interviewing this woman, and gradually becomes clear. She says, what other work could you do? Like, if you could dream up the perfect job, what would it be? And the best she can come up with is, I'd like to be the lady that works at the disability office. Aha, so you can catch welfare cheats. Well, no, she gets to sit down. Now, that just blows me away, right? Except, this is kind of what we're talking about here. If you're in an extraction environment or a manufacturing environment, and you can't do those jobs, or those jobs change, you're out in the cold, you're unemployed. And that's why unemployment goes here, because as these economies go, people get left out, and it's a little bit scary to think of being that person. All right, I want to talk about alienation, and this is cool because you'll hear elements of what we were just talking about with the physicians in this. So I think I told you guys I once worked in a chicken factory. I got a lifetime of PG-13 jokes because it was the breast room. And in the chicken factory, this is what you do. This was after I graduated with my sociology degree, fresh after reading Marx. So I had a lot of time to think about the fact that, well, A, I was bored. B, I gave myself raging tendinitis. But I'm sitting here, I'm working the chickens. I'm not really liking the chickens, but I'm working the chickens. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, do I own these knives? Nope, I don't own these knives. They only give you 3 knives for a whole shift of 3 hours, and if you ran over your chainmail glove with one of them, it was wrecked. And then they had these like little stainless steel sharpeners that were just the most precise, you know, like the last level to keep it super sharp. So if you hit your chainmail, it was gone, and you're gonna be sawing through things the rest of your shift. It was awful. Anyway, so you get 3 knives, not my knives. Not my cutting block, which is actually just a conveyor belt made of the same stuff your butcher board is made of. So, okay, do I own the chicken? Nope, don't own the chicken. Don't own the building. I don't own nothing. And in fact, I don't even have skills. You'll notice the whole time I was there, I learned to do 4 things. One was, because you all got to go a certain way. Imagine 3 hours of straightening out the breasts so they go the right way down the thing. This job was so friggin' boring I fell asleep standing up. And then you're 3 squares behind. Oh no! Terrible, terrible. Oh, and then you learn to do this, which was where you pop the wishbone out, right? Drag it, reach under. That's where the tendonitis comes from. Pop it out without getting too much of that expensive breast meat. And then slap it down. Next person, you pull, you do this, you get the blister and the skin off, you do this, throw it away, except it just goes in the thing. Then you trim one of the, and then the next one, trims the other breast, puts them on. That was it. 4 skills, 4 positions. Okay. I hated that job. I don't really even make friends because, I mean, it gets better. I owned my boots, but I didn't own the apron. I didn't own the arm gaiters, whatever they're called. I didn't own the big green gloves. I don't think I owned the hairnet. And I for sure didn't own the chainmail gloves, so I didn't cut off my fingers with the knives that were sharp, but not for very long, because I was not very good at it. Okay, now, I think I also told you this. My dear wife is a farm girl. There's a country song about that somewhere. And sometimes I look at my father-in-law with a certain amount of awe, respect, envy, maybe. So here's a guy, he's a dairy farmer. Now granted, he gets up at 4 a.m. or something stupid. Now the chicken factory job, you got to go to bed at 9, because if you go to bed at 10, and you get up at whatever it was, we had at 5 to get there by the time it opened. Like, you think it's hard to go through life with not a whole 8 hours of sleep? It's really hard to stand there on the factory line with less than 8 hours of sleep because the time just goes slower. Right? You get like 1 hour a day when you get home before you can like have to think, I gotta go to bed. Anyway, so this guy, he gets up at 0 dark 30, goes out and milks the cows. And it's work, and there's headaches that come along with it. It's hard for him to take a vacation, blah, blah, blah. But compared to the 4 skills I had learned while I was at the chicken factory, this guy walks out and he's got to know on a daily basis. So you may know this, you probably do know this, Georgia being Georgia. These things are mechanical cow suckers. You don't go like this anymore. You go, and it's like a shop vac with pumps on it. It's an awesome machine. Anyway, if that machine breaks down, you know who fixes it? Grandpa. So I'm learning this, and Grandpa's got mechanical skills to maintain his cow sucker. There's a term for it. And then he actually plays music for the cows. I think they like Bach, but not Beethoven, he said. I don't remember exactly. He also plays NPR, but the classical music kind. The cows like it. He has to know how to keep their milk production high. He's got to be aware of the bacteria count in the milk. If any of them are infected, he needs to isolate them, and right? So not only does he need the mechanics to keep the systems running, he needs to know some veterinary science, right? So that he can keep them healthy. That includes, on a dairy farm, you know what you have to do? Everything. The one thing, you might hire someone in to do the insemination, or you might just have a bull in the pasture and let God do it. But you gotta castrate, yep. You gotta dehorn. I know, never had Rocky Mountain oysters, and I don't think I'm gonna. You gotta dehorn. You gotta bird them. You gotta, right? You gotta do everything for these crazy critters. And then, you know what? He's got to have his eye on the market. He needs to know. Where is a good time to sell. He needs to know what his contracts with his vendors, with his clients who buys his milk are looking like. And the man also runs, however many 100 acres of crop farms to feed the animals. So there's your veterinary science. And in running the crop farms, you got to have some crop husbandry. You got to have some crop rotation. And there's a whole other set of machines which seems to be always broken. So as an independent business owner, this guy gets to use his brain to solve real-world problems at the highest level. This includes mechanics, it includes business, it includes biology of cows and the biology of plants. In fact, if you're going to run a farm, you really got to have a sense for ecology, right? Because you need to know how these systems all work together. It's it's really fascinating when you think about it. In truth, comparing the chicken factory job to the independent small farmer job, you're looking at a night and day sort of difference. This is in fact the difference of, right, hi, I'm a physician and I have a client list and they're patients that I've had since they were children and now they have their own children, and I'm running my own shop and I work for an HMO, I got to see this many, this is the slice I get, and I feel like I know 4 skills. Here's some antibiotics, here's some, go ahead.
All right. The guy over here on the left that owns that farm,
Yep.
he dies at the age of 50 of a heart attack. All right? A
He
lot of
might.
them do, because there's so much stress involved in that and trying to survive that, because it sounds great. And the work's hard, it's a great life until they take away the federal funding for milk, which allows us to buy for $2.50 a gallon when it would cost us $4.50 a gallon if they take it away.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for those supplements, farming wouldn't survive anymore.
Well, and you know, farming actually makes me really, really sad because we have fairly hypothetical conversations about left and right, markets versus government intervention. And the sad reality is there's not a thing we did today that didn't involve government intervention. From the cotton, right, to the milk, to the fuel in our cars, to the roads, to the school, to the... And the thing with farming is the scaling up that we've been talking about. Characters like this guy don't really exist anymore. And in fact, he's very, very old. Well, not very, very, especially if he's on the internet. You go, Chris. He's not a young person. I can't imagine a young person getting into it nowadays. With the number of head of cattle he has, there would be no way you could make a competitive go of it, right? So the farms are bigger. Instead of 100 head, maybe you got 1,000 head. But notice, if you got 1,000 head, how many acres do you need? And what size is the loan you're looking at? If I was a young man trying to get into dairy, I'm looking at something like a $5 million loan to start out with. And the government's involved at every step of the way, from how you plant to how you milk to what the milk's what you're gonna get for all of your different markets. And it absolutely burns a lot of them out. But I think, and this is why I use this example, is if you think about what's a perfect environment for you, right? And this is plays directly into Marx's notion of alienation. There's an environment where, and the farm example is kind of a good example of it, where this guy gets to engage a much broader suite of his human capacities and capabilities, his strengths and weaknesses, than the factory worker, right? Because the factory worker has been reduced to a cog in a machine. Now, well, not now. I think that's kind of an important point. And here's the other thing. Marx talks about this in terms of alienation, and I'll get to that in a second. But Marx isn't the only character that writes about this. In fact, Adam Smith, yes, Adam Smith, The Work of Nations, The Wealth of Nations, pardon me, he himself points out that in his hypothetical pin factory, the person that's reduced to doing this one thing and one thing only all day long, you've made his life miserable. You've distanced him from his humanity. Weber, we've talked about bureaucracy, we've talked about capitalism. Weber, with his focus on rationality, recognizes that as we move to ever more rational systems, we end up dehumanizing a big chunk of ourselves, because essentially we become cogs. Now, I do not say this to do any sort of noble savage or good old days sort of thing, but I think Marx kind of actually fell for it, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'll think about the small farmer or the guy with a pickup truck and a bed full of tools, and I think of them as the anti-Marx. Not because they hate Marx, but because if you look at someone who actually, like, let's think about it. The opposite of the factory worker, if I actually owned my tools, that's one step towards owning, right? Marx talks about owning the means of production. I'm owning the means of producing my own living, right? If I own the tools. If I own the raw materials, then I have some skin in the game, and raw materials matter. If I then do something to the product and own the product, then I've got something I can actually sell to people. If I have a client, then I'm making the product for somebody, right? So I've got a relationship there. And when you look at this, mythical small farmer, and many of them, I mean, it's been a rough 30 years for farming, absolutely. Curtis is 100% right. But when you look at that, this guy's in a much more human space than the factory worker, right? The factory worker owns nothing but his or her time, which he is selling at $8 an hour. And even when I was there 15 or some years ago, there were some of them that were there only for the healthcare, right? Because nobody else in town paid healthcare, but that doesn't matter. Now, I have up here 3 different ways that Marx thinks of alienation from our work. So what I just described is being alienated from your work, essentially. If you own the skills, and if you own the tools, and if you own the raw materials and the products, you own your means of production, right? This works all the way up into a contemporary webpreneur. If you are a small-time consultant and you own your computer and you own your skills, when you're communicating with potential clients and you're thinking strategically how you can meet their needs, notice you're owning your own means of production. You're not alienated from your labor. But for that factory worker at the chicken factory, they could not be more alienated from the results of their labor than they are, right? They don't see the profit, they don't see the clients, they don't see anything. Like I said, they're selling their time $8 an hour, and that's that. And consequently, oftentimes, these people make terrible employees because they don't care. Whereas a person that needs this relationship with this client to go well is going to protect that relationship. Now, again, I'm not trying to paint an overly rosy picture, but that's where the from our work comes in. I can also imagine, I've had these jobs. So that job it wasn't the worst job I ever had either, it was just a plain old factory job. But I've had jobs, some of you have had jobs, where you're on the work site at 7 in the morning, you're going home at 7 at night, and the one that I'm thinking of, we work Saturdays too, but we cut out early on Saturdays, we got home at 5. When I had that job, I didn't have a chance to even think. Like I said, you got home, you had an hour to yourself. On the plus side, your bank account piles up because you got nothing to spend money on. You got no time to spend it. On the downside, your life is ticking away, and what do you have to spend of your life? It's an hour a day. Now, if I were to take that job now, this would be hard on my life. You know why? I got a wife, I got kids, and I would do it for them if I had to, but it means I see the reasons I'm doing this an hour a day. And I've had jobs where all I could do on the weekends, because I was so mentally exhausted, was watch football games I didn't even care about. Like, after that experience, I understood traditional men much better. Okay, Eagles are winning, that's good. Do I care? No, but I don't really want to take the energy on my day off to go do something else, because, so what you notice there, if you're not seeing your spouse, you're not seeing your kids, if you're not going to church, not doing whatever it is you want to do, that job is taking you away from your life, okay? Now again, let's go back to this character here. You know what? He actually saw his kids growing up. Not only did he see his kids when they grew up, they helped around the farm. The economy as a term actually comes from the notion of home ec. You got to go deeper into the Greek or Latin or wherever the word comes from. But it comes from the idea of how you run your house as a home. In a traditional world, yes, there were men's roles, there were women's roles, but you worked together to create that home. And that included the economic work of running the fields, and it included the homework of running the household. But you did it together, and you were there. Your kids helped as part of it. You and your spouse were part of it. And in today's world, notice, we've taken that all apart. So we put the kids over here in school, you stay there, I don't have to worry about you. We send dad over here, we send mom over here, and right, that's all come apart. That's what I'm trying to get at. So that's where you end up alienated from your family and eventually from your life. That's what's going on here. And for Marx, so I'm using real examples from my own life. The fact of the matter is, there's not a single job I've ever had which even comes close to the commitment expected of an 1850s factory worker. You're talking 10 or 12-hour shifts, 6 or 7 days a week, right? And everything else still applies. There's one more way that Marx sees this alienation thing working, because for him, this is actually an underlying concept that drives a lot of things. I hope I can explain it quickly. In the most primitive, quote-unquote, economy, a barter economy, I can do something and you can do something, so we agree to swap, right? I know how to make shoes, you got a cow, so you butcher the cow, give me the leather, I make you some shoes, you give me a quarter of beef. Sounds awesome. All right. Now, there's no money involved. We agreed on this when we swapped. As you butcher the cow, you're actually doing this in response to me. As I'm building the shoes, I'm doing it in response to you. There's an actual personal relationship here. And we're expressing it economically through trading goods and services, but it's still a personal relationship, and the value is there. Cash is awesome. Money economies are awesome because we don't have to individually negotiate what the cow is worth and what the shoes are worth. I can say, I'll sell, what would handmade shoes be? Maybe 150, 200 bucks. I'll sell handmade shoes for 200 bucks. You'll sell, whatever kind of cow you have for however much. It smooths out all that trade. Economists much prefer a money economy over a bartering economy because it allows that smoothness. But notice, it also allows a distanciation, a distance between the value that we had with each other and with the products. The value gets abstracted. Now it's just 200 bucks. So when I make a pair of shoes, I'm not making a pair of shoes for a customer. I'm making a pair of shoes for 200 bucks, right? So that, even that value of the human relationship gets taken apart and expressed abstractly in terms of dollars. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, next time we're going to go over Marx a little bit more. There's finally one thing I have to say. Marx is an interesting character for a variety of reasons. There are layers to Marx's work. There's Marx the analyst and Marx the prognosticator, the predictor. I see Marx falling into a trap. And I see him falling into a trap that lots and lots and lots of very intelligent people fall into. Sometimes, at least in this way, intelligence is actually an enemy. We're going to talk about it on Thursday. Marx is trying to analyze and find what the driving forces of the economy and economic development are. He thinks if he can find those driving forces, he can then project how things will change in the future. I like it. I like prediction. I like trying to guess what's going to come. However, even the smartest of us can't see everything. And so, hold on. And so Marx, he's smart. He sees what he sees, and it's still only this much. And you can see it when you think about where we're at now. How could anybody in 1850 have imagined the internet and the iPhone and the internal combustion engine? It would have been impossible. So if he's not going to be able to think about those physical things, how is he going to think about socioeconomics, right? Nevertheless, he thinks he figured it out, and he projects forward. Here's the problem. I don't ever trust anybody with predictions, and I mean ever. When someone comes to you and says, this is how this economic thing is going to work out, this is how this political thing is going to work out, this is how this military invasion is going to work out. When you say, there seem like there's some real problems with this, and they say, nah, don't worry about it, then you recognize they are really, they're not thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. I see this with Marx, and this is just beating us in the face. By not thinking about how it could go wrong, by not thinking about, well, we actually just built an industrial system that's widely open to corruption by despots. You leave the door wide open for tens of millions of deaths over the 20th century. But you have to be able to take Marx, the analysis, and separate it from the results. Because you really have two different things going on here. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.